With Dutch and Brazilian heritage, Amanda Huits holds a bachelor's degree in international relations and a master's in political science from Leiden University in the Netherlands. Confronted with both her privilege and intergenerational trauma at an early age, when she visited her mom's original home in a favela in Brazil, Amanda has been dedicating her professional life to humanitarian work. Since 2020, she works at GPPAC, the Global Partnership for the Prevention of Armed Conflict, the world's largest member-led network of civil society organizations active in the fields of conflict prevention and peace building across the globe. There, she now belongs to the Learning and Operations team. Together, we explore Amanda's story of becoming, namely why Amanda decided to pursue a humanitarian career and some of the greatest challenges and joys of her day-to-day.
It really took me by surprise that they were so open and warm to me and welcoming. And my mother and I slept on the bedroom floor of my auntie's. And even though it was small and simple, it was such a warm and loving experience that I knew for sure, like, I want to share in this warmth and this kindness. And I want to pay back as well, so that these communities that are stricken with social, political, and economic issues, basically that's I can somehow contribute to improvement, that there's not this horrible crime, violence, the poverty, and it's just such a strange contrast to see the optimism, the happiness, and the warmth and the love that I received there, and on the other side, seeing that there's still so many challenging factors, of course, that make it hard to have a good standard of life.
I'm Carlota Guedes, and this is the Waking Youth Podcast. I like to start by grounding things in a little bit of personal history, so your personal history. And you told me a little bit about your story and your family story, so I know a little bit about the context. Where would you trace back the roots of your interest in peace, humanitarian work, social work? How would you begin talking about that?
I think it was not one specific moment that it was like an insight or an epiphany, like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I want to become a doctor, or I want to be an artist or a performer. I think it's kind of developed over time. And I think, well, I reflect back on my teenage years. I was quite a difficult teen, actually.
Okay. In what way?
Not necessarily in being extremely rebellious. I was rebellious in some ways, kind of not listening to my parents and thinking I knew everything, and wanting to be my own person and an adult. And I think probably many people relate to that. But at the same time, I was also struggling with my appearance, which I think is also a common issue at that age. So in regards to my appearance, I was just frustrated, to be honest, because my father is very white. He's a Dutchman. My mother grew up in Brazil and came to the Netherlands when she was 18. So in terms of the features that I inherited from them, I was also always quite frustrated that I inherited the wrong ones. I felt like I didn't have the nice tan skin, but I did have the curls, the white nose, the white hips. So that kind of rooted a lot of insecurity for me, kind of wanting to fit in, wanting to fit this mold of what beauty was perceived as in this Western white society image. And for me, that was one cause of frustration for me, kind of wanting to fit in, wanting to be the same, but then at the same time trying to embrace my bicultural identity. because I did think it was quite special and interesting. I mean, it's a country that Brazil is a country that's so far away, of course, from the Netherlands. And I grew up in such a relatively small, not so diverse city, small town, I should say, actually.
And why did your mom go, if I can ask, why did your mom go to the Netherlands?
So this actually is one of the things that made me very insecure when I was a teen. Like people would ask, like, why did your mom decide to come to the Netherlands? And what I understood over time, and I felt that she had some shame talking about this as well, but kind of grew in acceptance of it. When she was 18, it's quite a young age. My grandma, so her mother, sent her to the Netherlands for more opportunities, economic opportunities, but also safety. I mean, her brother, so my uncle was at quite a young age, shut at the front door of their house because they were living in quite an unsafe area in a favela.
Wow.
So I mean it's I mean, I can't even imagine what it's like to grow up in such an unsafe environment. And I completely understand why you would say to your child, like why you would send her away for more safety, economic opportunity, and to build a life for herself. So yeah, that was one of the reasons why my mother came to the Netherlands. Yeah, when she met my father, I mean, they quickly had my brother, and she had to stay, of course. But I mean, that whole story, they only told me in bits and pieces, and then it changed a little bit over time as I think my mom grew more accepting of what she experienced as a young girl herself. Yeah, but I feel now so proud of her that she did take such a big leap at such a young age, leaving your own country, your own culture, your family behind, everything you know, and to go to a country where you don't speak the language at all, end up in a town you've never been, then to meet someone new and to establish this whole new life. I mean, I'm so proud and grateful that she did that. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so you were talking a little bit about how it wasn't a particular moment that this interest of yours in humanitarian aid started growing on you. So growing up, and particularly around high school, did you have a solid idea of what you wanted to do, or did you had an idea or perhaps something else that you wanted to do, just to understand how you end up in IR and later where you are?
Yeah, I feel that I had several interests, of course, as a young girl. I mean, one day I was going to be a doctor, the next day I was going to be a singer, and so forth. But what was really definitive for me is that my mother kept pushing me. Like, I think, I think maybe it's kind of a common trait of kids or expect a common expectation that parents, migrant parents have. Like, you have to make these opportunities that you have, you make them worth it. So my mother always told me you have to become rich so you can buy anything you want and you can be then so happy. And you could be a doctor, and then you would never worry that there's anything that you couldn't buy. So that was a huge pressure on my shoulders, of course, as a young girl. And her understanding of becoming rich would be to go to uni, to then get a high paying job. So that was all that I was kind of focusing on and trying to achieve, to make her dream kind of come true and to meet her expectations. But that just put a lot of pressure on me.
Yeah. How did you deal with that pressure?
For me, it was difficult because I tried to push myself, of course, to meet those standards, to get good grades, to study Greek and Latin, even if I wasn't really interested in it, just so I could go to medical school and all of that. But I had this inner frustration with myself, like, no, this is not really what I'm interested in, but why am I not interested in this? Like, this is what I should be doing to get where where I would want to be, or where my mother would want me to be, and then to become happy. But I think when I saw my parents also still, I think one point of realization for me that money would never be a happy end goal was when I saw my parents still struggling, even when we didn't necessarily grow up poor. I mean, we weren't rich either, but there was always still this, oh, we would want to, or at least my mother was the one who would always say, oh, we want more clothes, or oh, I would love to buy another handbag. And it was never enough, you know. So there I really saw like, even if you have $1 million, you would still want millions more. So that really made me realize that money would never give me happiness, and therefore I have to find something else that will, where I do feel a purpose, I do feel a goal, and that does give me a drive. So then I started, trying to find my way. You know, like if it's not becoming rich, what else should I do with my life? And this was not easy, of course, but I think, especially at the end of high school, I didn't pass my high school exams in one time. I failed the first time, and I was really devastated with that. Of course, that was a huge disappointment to my parents, and I felt myself like a failure. And I also agreed that I had wanted to go to Brazil for many, many years because I'd never been myself as kids. I mean, the air flights are extremely expensive. So I had been saving for years to go, and I agreed with my parents that if I passed my high school exams, that I could go to Brazil, and my mom would go with me. So when I failed, I was so disappointed, and I'd been looking forward to it so much. And then she said, "Okay, we should still go, and I mean, you've saved the money, so let's just go." So I was so happy. I mean, getting to go there and finally seeing my family. I mean, I hadn't seen my grandma in years. Seeing her, seeing the culture, the beauty, everything. It was so impressive to me. And I think there really I got this insight, that I got this understanding that this is what. Yeah, I think. Yeah, it was particularly when I was meeting my aunties, because that's where we were staying while we were there. My aunties were not blood related, but they were my mother's neighbors. And while my grandma was working, my mother spent a lot of time there, and they basically raised my mother. So to me, it was such a surreal experience, kind of being there as family. And in the Netherlands, it's quite unusual that you would be welcomed in that way with such warmth and kindness if you're not blood related. So that was like, so it really took me by surprise that they were so open and warm to me and welcoming. And my mother and I slept on the bedroom floor of my auntie's. And even though it was small and simple, it was such a warm and loving experience that I knew for sure, like, I want to share in this warmth and this kindness. And I want to pay back as well, so that, I mean, these communities that are stricken with social, political, and economic issues, basically that's I can somehow contribute to improvement. That there's not this horrible crime, violence, the poverty, and yeah, it's just such a strange contrast to see the optimism, the happiness, and the warmth and the love that I received there, and on the other side, seeing that there's still so many challenging factors, of course, that make it hard to have a good standard of life.
Yeah. And so your aunties at that point, they were living in a favela?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I didn't realize myself actually that it was such because there's different levels of favela. Like there's certain areas that are very dangerous, but I took the second time I went there, I took an Uber, and the Uber refused like to take me up there. I was like, why? It's so safe there. But in his eyes, it was like, oh no, this is already too much favela, and it's not safe to go up. And I mean, at night we would hear shooting sometimes, but it was relatively safe where they lived. But yeah.
And did you speak Portuguese with them? Or how did you do it with the language?
Yeah, that was a challenge. I didn't speak great Portuguese at the time, but like with hand and feet, you get a long way. So no, my nephew was the only one speaking English actually, so he would do a little bit of translation, and you pick up easily if it's if you're around it all the time. So I did. We communicated creatively.
Okay. Okay, so wow, I cannot imagine the contrast of those two realities. So was that a catalyst then for your choice after that of what to study?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was such a transformative experience for me. Kind of,
Mm-hmm.
I've never before that I'd never been outside of Europe at all. So it was the first time kind of seeing the different standard of living, the poverty, the favelas. I mean, I remember like it's engraved in my memory the way from the airport to my auntie's house, seeing all these houses that were built in with the materials that are there, and it left a really big impression on me, and it's really motivated me to start and kind of explore what can I do to contribute or to help, feeling so aware of my privilege in that moment.
Yeah. And so between, that point where you choose international relations all the way to then joining GPAC, which stands for the Global Partnership for the Prevention of Armed Conflict. Correct?
Yes, you
Yes.
nailed it.
Okay.
Yes.
What would you, perhaps what would you highlight as the transformative experiences that then equipped you to also do the work that you're doing, or perhaps open your eyes to certain realities or ideas that were helpful to what you're doing now?
So maybe to start, I think my motivation for getting into uni, taking the course that I did, I studied international relations, international studies. So I wanted to better understand what are the socioeconomic issues, the cultural issues that are causing such inequality in the world, basically. And then you realize there's so many factors, there's so many power dynamics at play, and it's so complicated, basically. So it did give me great insight, and I got more interested in politics, particularly seeing how much impact the choices that are made there have on communities, on entire population groups, of course, and particularly the impact of certain discourses. So, for example, I started to explore more the whole war on drugs discourse, how just the framing of drug users as criminals has such devastating impacts on entire communities, the criminalization. Yeah, from that, I got quite interested in exploring for my master thesis human security discourse. So when I came across this term, human security, it was like an epiphany to me. I mean, it's such a powerful concept that instead of focusing on state security, so that safety means that the state is doing well. And sorry if I'm getting too much into the nerdy side of political
Go for
science
it.
here.
Go for it. I was gonna just ask you now what it means for you.
Yeah, so how I understood it is that human security is more about the aspects that make you as an individual secure. So it's economic security, it's psychological security, it's health, and it has so many different aspects that it really encapsulates this is what the human is of security, instead of just focusing on security means fighting and war and protecting a certain nation state. I mean, that to me just, and I guess it somehow relates to my personal background, wanting to understand like also how it kind of helped me also to justify why my mother made this trip to the Netherlands, to this shift and this big move to the Netherlands, right? Because there's often this narrative in the Netherlands that there's luck seekers, that if you're not coming from a humanitarian crisis area, like in true conflicting war, that you don't have the right to seek that it's not justified that you're migrating to a different country, that
What's
you're
that
not
term?
allowed to see.
Can you repeat the term?
Luck seekers. It's like you're just coming here in search of luck, in search of money, basically. You're an economic refugee. So there's this huge like taboo around this in the Netherlands, at least from, I guess this is also part of the shame that I sometimes felt. Like my mother did come here in search of economic opportunity. And I mean, she rightfully did, I feel like now, but back then it was like, oh, she didn't come here because she had family here. She didn't, I mean, she did have a cousin here, and yeah. But technically, she would be classified as an economic migrant, right? And especially in this political debate of too many migrant inflow and can we accept more refugees? I feel that this is such an important conversation to have. Like, when is it justified that someone comes in search of their own happiness and their own luck? I mean, we're all certainly searching for it essentially. So why does one person have the privilege to live here and another person doesn't? And for me, kind of looping back to that concept of human security, she didn't have factors of human security fulfilled. So she was living in fragility and in human insecurity. So it's only justified and understandable that you then go seek those factors so that you can live in human security. So that to me was so interesting to understand. And writing my master thesis about it, came across this great policy note that GPPAC developed on human security, which helped me to better understand the concept and writing my thesis. And then I ended up doing an internship there and never left, essentially.
Just a quick tangent. Do you feel that is still a reality, the prejudice about immigrants in the Netherlands, particularly the ones who are, I don't know if they're still perceived as luck seekers?
Yeah, I do feel, especially under this more rightist government and trying to also appeal to more populist right voters, you do see that they're trying to pin these narratives of the country's full, we don't have any more space. And of course, there's some truth in that, but you need to have a decent moral discussion about it as well. It's not that you can demonize these people for coming here in search of safety, if it's physical or economical, that just because you don't want to invest the economic resources to set up decent procedures and processes around the influx of immigrants. I feel it's it's a simplistic and inhumane narrative that's being spun by the current government, unfortunately.
Okay, so before we go into GPPAC, which I'm very curious about, what I find interesting about your academic path is that, I have some friends that studied international relations, and one of the comments they tend to make is that it's very enlightening to understand at the systems level what is going on and the complexity of the challenges ahead of us and already taking place. And that tends to be also quite theoretical compared to, let's say, a business degree or a communication degree. What I find interesting about your path was that you seem to have always hands-on experience supporting those studies. Did you hesitate because I know this is a theme when you're in university, did you hesitate leaving the bachelor and getting yourself in a master's? Can you walk me a little bit through that decision? Or because you were already, doing in the field, I see that you visited Brazil. I don't know if that was after that first trip with your mom. Was that after? At the favelas?
Yeah, I went a second time alone. Yeah.
So if you can just tell me a little bit about that. How was that decision for you?
Yeah, so I always knew that I didn't want to pursue an academic career. So for me, doing the bachelor's and the master's was really a way to explore where I wanted to go professionally, working in the development field.
Why not? Why not the academia?
Interesting question. I guess for me, it's greatly motivating to be hands-on, be in touch with people, and to apply and practice, make an impact, and that you see the impact of your work, even if it's not directly but virtually. And that was a great motivation for me to choose to pursue a career in the development field. So that's why
Makes sense.
an academic career wasn't necessarily appealing to me. I kind of had this idea of it being stuck behind a computer on a desk, which essentially I'm now as well. So it's not a great difference. But
yeah. Okay, so then the decision to make a master's, there was not. It's just natural to do that then.
Okay, yeah, no, I guess when I decided to do the International Studies Bachelor, I was very much searching still. What is the field that I want to focus on? Where do I want to be? And to indeed understand these bigger systemic issues and concepts. And I felt, honestly, that was such a wide perspective that for my master's, I needed to zoom in to something to better understand, but also to develop my own expertise. So, yeah, like I said, it was for me very interesting to see the impact of certain policies, to get more into policy evaluation, political discourse, and explore the impacts of all those. And then, of course, do that through developing case studies, seeing what it means in different contexts. Yeah, I guess that was my reasoning behind that. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So GPAC, what is GPAC and why are you there? And what is your role?
Feedback. It's a greatly complicated puzzle that we always, whenever we try to explain it, it's like, what is this magic word? No, GPAC. I'm so grateful to be working there. I'm of course incredibly biased, but they're not forcing me to say anything. It's my honest opinion that it's such a great organization. And to me, it was appealing to work there, first, of course, because of my interest in human security. But once I really got to know the network, it's because of its organizational structure. So GPAC is organized in a way unlike a lot of other international non-governmental organizations, INGOs, or a lot of other development organizations. Traditionally, a lot of them are organized in a top-down way, where there's a global office somewhere in Europe or America, in the States, where they communicate with the country offices. And definitely that a lot of other organizations, other INGOs are organized in a top-down way, where the head office is somewhere in Europe or the States, and they delegate and communicate work with country offices, and then work with local civil society organizations. Whereas GPAC is completely the opposite way. So instead of this traditional development aid perspective of we're going to help you develop your communities through our approaches, GPAC is an organization that is led by local civil society. So it's completely ran by local peace builders of over 250 member organizations who are all working on peace building and conflict prevention in their own local communities. And they decide what we do as a global network. So that to me is so important, that they are in charge. And we at the Global Secretariat in The Hague are just there to support them and to basically do whatever they tell us to do. So they are the strategic driver behind what we do as a network. They decide our thematic priorities because they know best, right? What is now urgent in a community. So, for example, 2 years ago, we identified climate security and emerging threats with COVID as one of the most important issues in peace building and conflict prevention. And then we said this when they identified these priority collectives we all said, okay, but now let's see, what can we together as a global network do to address these issues local communities are facing? And working together in that way with colleagues from Kyrgyzstan and Palestine and Colombia and Cameroon is just so exciting, getting all connected, even if it's online. And when we get the opportunity in person to exchange, it's so worthwhile, and you really see how much expertise and knowledge is there on the ground to benefit from in other contexts. So we facilitate a lot of knowledge exchange and learning to benefit from that local expertise.
So what would you say within this context of your work at GPPAC, the biggest challenge and the biggest learning comes to mind?
I think the biggest challenge, do you mean for me personally or as like a global network organization?
I was thinking more personally, but if it comes a collective one that you would like, that you feel inspired to address, go for it.
So I think collectively, I've realized that it's so difficult to make the case for peace building and conflict prevention and investing in that. Because it requires patience and it requires a lot of time and resources. And in the end, it's quite difficult to prove that you've prevented a conflict because, I mean, nothing happened. Luckily, you didn't. And of course, we try to find ways around it with early warning systems and all sorts of interesting solutions and methodologies. But yeah, just funding in peace building and conflict prevention, it's really a major challenge. Now, for me personally, working in this field, working with GPAC, it has been such a rich experience, getting to connect with so many different people, learning from so many experts, young and old, with a shared mission of desiring peace, wanting to have peace personally in our communities, in our societies, and globally, of course. And that has been a driving force of inspiration for me, working with them and connecting with this community of like-minded people who all share the same mission of desiring peace. But it has also forced me to reflect on my own person in taking this space, of course. So there's certain privilege, of course, that I have. And at the same time, I feel that through my background and kind of having inherited that transgenerational trauma almost of conflict and the impact that it has on one's life, but then still realizing that, yeah, kind of facing the guilt of, and I think we've discussed this also a little bit when we met in Madrid, like the guilt of having that privilege and taking that space, kind of asking yourself, do I deserve to claim this space? What is my role in helping others? Should I not? I've wondered myself, like, should I even be working this position? Should it not be some local expert from a country that is in conflict at the moment? I mean, in the Netherlands, it's relatively peaceful, and that kind of feeling of guilt, it was difficult to deal with, and I'm still dealing with it at times now. But I try to remind myself that it's all interconnected. Basically, we all, in our personal lives, in our societies, conflict is everywhere. It can arise so quickly, and we all have a responsibility because we're interconnected and we are benefiting from certain systems, and we all have this responsibility to contribute to the betterment of that system, I believe. So in that way, yeah, I try to be, of course, mindful of my own privilege and grateful for the things and the opportunities that I do have working at GPAC and getting the opportunities that I have. But I also try to be very mindful that it's a responsibility that I have to take. I have to contribute. I have to use that privilege in a way to, yeah, make sure that the conflict that is faced elsewhere, that we all contribute to the betterment of it. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. And have you ever felt resistance from the side of the local peace builders?
No, I haven't actually. No, it's actually the opposite, I would say. I was recently in Cameroon 2 weeks ago, and there I had the opportunity to visit a project that we're doing for the EU called Voice, which is aimed at preventing radicalization of youth. So there, actually, when we first arrived, a lot of the local partners that we work with there kind of perceived and still had this internal assumption, right, that my colleague and I, coming from the global secretariat, are the ones representing GPAC, and that we would be kind of telling them what to do or whatever. But that's where we actually try to unpack some of that and to kind of have this conversation, right, of course we're very happy to be here, but you have to tell us what to do. You are the one representing GPAC through your member organization. You are the one with the expertise here, and we're just here to support wherever you want us to support. So that was quite interesting to see that play out in person, because often online it's a bit more difficult to perceive those power dynamics, and in person it's a bit more clear in even the body language, how we perceive certain power dynamics. And I think it's so important working cross-regionally with international colleagues that we unpack those expectations or assumptions, that we kind of integrate it ourselves, and that we're aware of our privileges and try to ensure a safe and equal working ground.
That's really cool. Okay, so for someone who might be considering joining some kind of humanitarian work, I've heard a lot of people that were interested in it, but they wonder if they were tough enough, for example, or others that felt this aspect of the guilt that you're describing. What is for you the character or perhaps the traits that are nice to have for someone who will be embarking this journey of being involved in humanitarian work?
I think really the field needs all types of personalities, and it benefits from having different characteristics there. But I think one universal one that's really important to have is, of course, compassion. Yeah, being driven by wanting to make social impact, to help others. And at the same time, I think being reflective also on yourself is essential, because especially in this field, the personal and the professional is really intertwined very often. So you need to understand yourself. And of course, the work can be so emotional and really devastating at times. I mean, it's definitely challenging. And at times I've wondered myself as well, is this the type of work that I'm capable to do? Am I mentally strong enough to see all of this despair? And there, I think it's very important to invest in your psychological well-being, your mental well-being, to seek support when you need to, and really see that as an investment as well. Because if you feel strong and confident about yourself, if you feel that you can be vulnerable and talk about the issues that are bothering you and are kind of at peace with yourself, then you can also carry that energy and that attitude forward in your work. And I think that's so important, that we come as our true selves in the workspace, so that we can truly connect with others and really establish lasting relations and connections and make an impact together. Because you don't get very far alone. You have to work together, and you need good relations to do that.
Absolutely. Okay. And our last question, as this podcast evolves, this question of age, and more than age, this process of becoming an adult or becoming more mature than yesterday, I feel more and more inspired to have this temporal conversations with your younger self and older self to get us thinking about, where we were, where we used to be with all those doubts and insecurities and how far we have come. And also a couple of years from now, what does our current self think and feel would be really important for us to take with us. So what would be, those words that you would like to share with your younger self that was figuring it out, and your older self that is now becoming as well, no?
Yeah, it's a continuing journey, right? You're never fully become. For my younger self, I wouldn't say anything in terms of, oh, you should do this or that, because I think that process or of figuring that out yourself is kind of what's part of the journey and part of the struggle, and that forms who you are as a person. And I think it's really important to experience all parts of your personal journey. But what I would have said, maybe looking back, is to not be afraid to reach out for support when you feel that it's needed, or even when you doubt if it's needed. I mean, it's a lot that you go through, especially as a young person. For me, it was such, and I think for so many other young people, it's such an intense period of your life. And having a friend or a psychologist or an aunt or someone else, even a friend, just to talk to share those struggles with, it can really be such a weight lifted off the shoulders, and to realize that you're also not at it alone. Just seeking that support, I think, is so important, because looking back, I was so stuck in my head sometimes and thinking the world was going to end, and then in reality just took one conversation with a friend to completely change that viewing. So that's what I would say to my younger self. To my older self, I truly hope that I stay optimistic and hopeful. I think it's very important to dream big. And even if some may say that it's a bit naive or a bit, you have to be patient and all that, of course, that's true. But it's also important to stay ambitious and hopeful that things can be different, and kind of being brave and stepping out to make sure that things do change, because they can. You just have to strongly believe and visualize what that can look like, and then share it, and then slowly that can start to become. So
and embody that possibility.
Exactly. So important. So that would be my message.
Beautiful. Thank you. Is there anything else you would like to share? How do you feel?
Grateful. I just wanted to say thank you, honestly. I mean, like I said before, I'm quite an introverted person. Don't normally speak out like this, and you've made it such a safe space, such a lovely conversation. So thank you so much for inviting me here, and I'm sure many more interesting conversations to come.
Thank you, Amanda. Waking Youth is an independent podcast production that you can find more about at wakingyouth.substack.com. Our lovely theme music is composed and produced by Carlota Guedes, who also edits our episodes, and I'm Carlota Guedes. If you like this episode, please consider sharing it with someone you love. And before you go, thank you for listening and being with us. Ciao!